Hello everyone, and welcome to It's Monday, Time to Meet the Author. I'm super excited today because I have the wonderful Jeremy Heimans with me today, and he's talking about his new book called New Power. And what's the full title of the book?
It is called New Power, How Power Works in Our Hyperconnected World and How to Make It Work for You. But the truth be told, it has a different subtitle in the UK.
Okay, well I'm glad I didn't try and remember that.
Exactly. Every country has their own spin on it, but the book's called New Power.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And what's the general premise of the book?
So look, the book is about how to exercise power today, right? And how to exercise power in a way that's different to the way it's traditionally been exercised. So if you think about one way to set the scene, you think about the difference between the way Harvey Weinstein exercised power and the Me Too movement. So Harvey Weinstein thinks of power as a currency. So for decades, he hoarded up that power. He spent that power to punish people that were his enemies, to reward his friends, and he built up this whole hierarchy where he was at the top. In the Academy Awards, he was tied only with God for the person most thanked, right? So this is
really?
I know, it's crazy. So this is a person who really protected himself. He really understood how to exercise this kind of old power, is what we call. But actually, think about the Me Too movement that helped to topple this giant. The Me Too movement works very differently. This was a power that was made by many, and it was the fact that one person spoke out that enabled the person next to them to speak out, that created this whole chorus of voices. There wasn't one leader at the top of a hierarchy. There were these many leaders who emerged to take on this mantle, and that movement was decentralized. The analogy we use is, rather than working like a currency, like old power does, it worked like a current. It surged across the world. It moved from place to place, from industry to industry. In France, Me Too became "Denounce your pig," which was very French. In each place, different people took up its energy and tried to harness it. So the thing about New Power is, it's this essential skill of the 21st century, which is this ability to harness the connected crowds that now live all around us, that are such a big part of our daily lives. And the question is, the people who can figure out how to harness that energy are the people who are coming out on top, for better and for worse.
So is the power the individual, or is the power the person that starts the movement?
It's really both. I mean, I think it's really about those people who know how to empower others in such a way where they can get their goals met. And so you see great versions of this and you see really scary versions of this. One of our big arguments in the book is that it's really important we all learn these skills. The people who are on the side of the angels, the kinds of people that we hope are watching this video, they need to claim these skills. They need to learn how to build movements, how to spread their ideas, how to create these new kinds of communities. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't do that, then the people who are trying to spread hate and misinformation, they're doing it already.
So it needs to be used in a positive way.
Exactly.
And what inspired you to write it?
Well, I've been an activist all my life from a very young age. So I've always been fascinated with, how do you get people mobilized and inspired around the biggest problems in the world? And so what I saw as a person who'd started my activism as a teenager, or even younger than that, and I was using fax machines because that's all I had, right? So I was organizing fax campaigns to world leaders. Now, there wasn't very much that I could get done with a fax machine. And having seen the whole arc over the course of my life and my career of how now, the kids these days, they just have these incredible tools of participation in their hands. They're so empowered. Think about those kids in America right now, the Parkland high school kids who've risen up on the issue of gun violence.
Fantastic.
These kids just understand how to mobilize people. It's in their blood. They've grown up with that. And that's such a powerful skill today. And so this book is about teaching everybody this set of skills, whether you're starting a business, or you're an activist, or you're the local dentist trying to spread the word in your community around healthcare. These are all situations in which you need new power.
And do you give people tips and tools on how to use the power within the book?
We do. It's really practical. We try to really say, okay, if you're trying to spread an idea today, what are the elements of that? If you're trying to get an idea out there, because in the case of ideas, people used to just drop their ideas down on top of people. So if you happen to have access to the television or whatever, sure, you could make the perfect ad or the perfect soundbite and people would listen to it. But in a world today where we're all capable of spreading a message, it looks different. I mean, we use this very simple example in the book of the ice bucket challenge. You remember that a few years ago, right?
I remember pouring the ice on
Right,
my head.
exactly. So you would remember this, right? And so, we all did it. It was, you couldn't avoid it really if you remember that summer. Like everyone was doing it. And it had these 3 characteristics that we break down in the book. The first, it was actionable. So the action that you were asked to take was make this video, right? And so everybody could take an action. It wasn't just a message that you had to listen to. It was something you could do. The second thing was it was connected. So I bet at the end of your video, Holly, you challenged someone else, right?
I think it was my dad.
It was your dad, right? Yeah. Exactly. Whoever would be most embarrassed, right? So you challenged someone else to do it, and this was this wonderful mechanism that made it spread, right? Because it connected you to the next person who did it. And it made everybody who did it feel like they were part of this much bigger thing. And then the third element is what we call the idea must be extensible. And what I mean by extensible is you can change it and adapt it and make it your own. So I bet your video is different to your dad's video, right? So we call this the ACE framework. Ideas need to be actionable, they need to be connected, and they need to be extensible. And if you look at Me Too, if you look at the Ice Bucket Challenge, and even if you look at what some companies are doing to spread their brands and products, they've got these 3 elements in common.
Everyone's trying to spread the message nowadays, and actually I've just written a book as well about businesses doing purpose correctly. But it's really interesting to have that sort of idea in the head of how you do spread these messages and get a momentum going.
That's right. And I mean, your book is about businesses really creating a sense of purpose around what they do, but you can't do that from the top down, right? You have to be able to get your employees and your consumers to own that message in their own way. And the more you try to dictate that from the top down, the less effective that will be. So I think your book really makes that case, I think, very strongly.
And individuals really do have power in their pocket with their phones.
They really do.
So who do you think's winning the battle of new power currently?
Well, I'm an optimist by nature. In 2018, the battle is pretty pitched, right? You think about climate change, right? An issue that you care about as well as me. That's a great example where the climate deniers are spreading misinformation using new power. They're being very effective. And the climate scientists, in our view, they need to get with these new power ideas, because it's not enough anymore just to have the facts on your side. It's not enough just to have the truth on your side. You have to also be able to spread your idea, to mobilize people around what you do. So from our perspective, our mission with this book is getting the doctors fighting the anti-vaxxers, the climate scientists debating the deniers, all those people trying to build a better world. They need to learn how to do this. Because otherwise, similarly, people building these purpose-driven businesses, I want those guys to master this before the people who are only interested in extraction.
It's sharing that message and really far and wide, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
So what do you think leaders of tomorrow should prepare for, which is different from today?
So Lady Gaga's a really interesting kind of celebrity, because most celebrities make it all about them. But actually what Lady Gaga's done is build a community of her fans.
She's one of the most followed people in the world, is she?
She's very effective, right? She's got incredibly passionate fans who really believe in her. She can count on those fans to mobilize around her. But the way she's achieved that is she's created this community of little monsters, and this is what she calls her fans. So, Justin Bieber's fans are called Beliebers, right? But it's really about him, right? It's about believing in Bieber. Whereas for Lady Gaga, it's actually about the fans. So Lady Gaga's the star who actually has tattoos of her fans on her, rather than the usual thing, which is her fans have tattoos of her. Yeah. So she's done this thing where she's really invested in helping her fans, many of whom are young gay kids, kids who are at the margins of society, giving them an identity, giving them community that isn't just based on her, but it's actually helping her fans connect with each other and support each other through the things that are difficult about their lives. So I think she's a really interesting model, again, for even someone with that much celebrity. We all have different ways of leading, and I think it's worked out really well for her.
How does this all apply to business?
Well, look, we're seeing all of these businesses emerge that are mastering new power. Think about Airbnb. So this is a business that's built on new power. They've found a way to get all these people coordinating with each other. It's fascinating that in the book we describe how Airbnb managed to get its hosts to knock on 250,000 doors in San Francisco in order to help it win this fight it was having with the San Francisco government. Now, imagine Hilton Hotels being able to rally its guests in its lobbying fights. It would never happen, right? So there's this ability, these companies that are building these online communities and that are really cultivating those communities. It's a really powerful asset. The other thing I think worth thinking about is the companies and products and services that are giving people a way to participate, to really own the product with them. Those are the ones that are hugely successful. You know, we tell the story of a British company called Brewdog. It's a beer company. You know Brewdog? Yeah. They're a lot of fun, right? Run by these ragtag Scotsmen. But what they did so effectively was they brought the crowd into every aspect of their business, right? So rather than getting a lot of funding from traditional banks and other sources, they created this idea of equity punks, and they asked members of the public to basically fund the growth of the business. They then have these annual general meetings, and instead of having an annual meeting which is full of, boring minutes and regulations, it's just a huge musical festival. And everybody comes and, there's plenty of beer there, and it creates this community among their customers. They also allow their customers to design their next brews. So there's this whole integrated, really thoughtful way that they've integrated the consumer into the experience of being part of Brewdog in such a way that they're much more loyal. They were able to get fantastic terms from the crowd for those investments that they did. And it's become this kind of cult brand. So what all of these companies are doing is they're getting a real premium by giving people a way to participate that makes them feel like co-owners and therefore makes them value the product or the service more. And when you combine that with a sense of purpose, as you describe in your book, and when you combine that with a great product, you can build what we call this participation premium. And so in the book, we lay out in very practical ways, how an ordinary entrepreneur or a business person can use some of these new techniques.
I was actually going to say as well, it's very similar, our books, with the purpose-driven business really helping drive businesses to do better, not only for their bottom line, but through other ways, just like you're saying, can do better for the world as well.
Exactly, yeah. Our books are like brother and sister.
So just final comment, really.
Yes.
When you were 8, you managed to get yourself an International Peace Prize, which is absolutely phenomenal. My co-authors are just as amazing as you as well.
Mark and Craig, amazing.
Mark and Craig, amazing guys. Do you all come from space? Are you aliens? Like, literally reading your bios, I'm like, oh my God, these people are so super impressive.
Well, I don't know. I was a strange child, let's be honest. I had this idea that even at age 8, I could change the world. And so my philosophy is I never want to lose that idealism. Some would call it naivety. As a schoolboy growing up in Australia, as I did, that somehow I could affect the world. But actually that idealism, that belief that you can change the world is part of what this book's about. It's about giving everybody that same feeling and giving everybody the tools to do it. And I think it's really important that none of us lose that idealism at a time when there's so much chaos in the world, where people feel like they're falling behind, there's a lot of conflict. We want this book to give people hope, and we want this book to give them the tools to kind of leap ahead in this kind of crazy new world.
Well, it certainly does. So well done, and thank you very much for talking to me today.
Such a pleasure, Holly.
Thank you.
Thank you.